Good evening. It's Barb Houlding from K9HS Courses, and I'm really excited to welcome you to the first of our In Conversations series. And we're going to be looking at managing your practice during a crisis. And I'm absolutely delighted to welcome Jo Paul. She's an acclaimed equine physiotherapist and a great friend of mine. So I'm delighted she's come along, and we're going to share experiences from our perspective of being clinical educators and clinical practitioners. So welcome, Jo. How are you?
I'm absolutely great. Thank you very much for inviting me over tonight to the canine world. Not often I'm here. It's great to be working again with Barbara. We've worked together on and off in our parallel worlds since 1995, I think. But we met in a clinical educator situation, and we've sort of been working at the Royal Vet College together, sharing clinical ideas. And it's amazing, although we've had the equine canine worlds to work in as individuals, how when we come together, we share very similar values on both clinical education and our clinical work. So it's great to be here, and thanks for inviting me.
You're so welcome.
One of the things that we were talking about just before we came on air, and Barbara reminded me, we were both examining for the CK9HS course for APAT a few years ago now, and it was all run at my yard. And obviously I have lots of equine facilities, but the canine examinations went on in my kitchen and living room, and Barbara was examining a student with a Scottish deerhound, I believe. And at that point, the cat decided it was absolutely adamant it was going to get into my living room from the kitchen and was scratching. And I think Barbara was just about having a hissy, worried that the Scottish deerhound would take off after my cat. So I really want to assure her that for tonight's tech, the cat is firmly outside. So let's hope she doesn't start scratching at the door.
Oh, yeah, and that was great, because I thought I had the best deal, because I was examining and working inside in the warm, and you were outside in the freezing cold with the horses, and there it was. Yeah, I was terrified at that moment. Anyway, before we start the questions, Jo, I just thought I'd do a little bit of housekeeping to explain to people how to use this platform in case they're new to it. So we have a chat box down on the right-hand side, and it's great to see so many people signing in, saying where they're coming from. So if you keep saying hello when you arrive and where you're from, it is fantastic. And that's where you need to put your comments and information like that. Please don't put your questions in there. If you could put your questions in, if you look along the bottom navigation bar, there's somewhere that's so ask a question, and we've got one in there already. That's where the best place is to put it, so we don't miss them. There's also a poll just to the right of ask a question, and we've put a question in there between us. Jo and I had a think. So please enter the poll and vote, because we'd really like that information to see. We're kind of representing animal therapy together, but it would be really fascinating for us to see whether you're equine, exotics, canine, or both. So do use the poll as well. The ask a question, that's time stamped, so I can record the time we do that question, so you can go back easy. But it's also got something called upvoting. So if you see a question you really like, you can vote for it, and it takes it to the top of the list. So as we go through, please put your questions in there, and we'll do a bit of Q&A at the end for sure. I'd also like to say a really big thank you to Sarah. So Jo is up in East Lothian. I'm here in Norfolk, but my practice is in Suffolk. Sarah's in Cambridgeshire, and she's just going to support people in the chat, because that moves up, and that just helps us really focus on the questions and getting the information out to you. I've also devised a really expansive extra additional resource that I'll tell you about later, that I think a lot of you will find really useful. So we're going to sort of start. And Sarah's going to be saying hi to you as you arrive, but also if anybody has any trouble hearing or seeing anything, you need to refresh your page. So Joe, I'd really like to start with the first question, which lots of people have been raising over the last few weeks about what's an emergency, what's an essential, are we essential, and just what's the difference between the two. So if I can send that over to you to sort of share your thoughts on that one, that would be great.
I think it's really difficult because the government did say essential workers should continue to work. And in normal circumstances, I believe we are essential to the animal world, especially animals that are elderly and needing physiotherapy or competition animals. But I think that has to be said in normal times, and we're not in normal times. No. We're in times where I think as professionals, we've got to be really careful to lead by example. And if we have to decide whether we are, whether we really need to go out to work, and because, you know, like it or loathe it, I'm a physiotherapist, and I very often the public perceive I go and massage horses, and if they think that their neighbour can bring in the horse massage person, then there's nothing to stop them going off and getting their hair done or their nails done or whatever. And I think we would, if we continued to work, then we, in this time when the government has advised, and most of our professional bodies have advised for only emergency work to happen, then I think we give out the wrong message. And certainly my feeling is, I've only ever been, I think, in equine work called out probably 3 or 4 times when it has been what I would call a true emergency, in which case the horse was going to immediately deteriorate, or his health would be deteriorating significantly within the next couple of weeks if I didn't go out and treat. And so therefore, certainly my professional view is I'll only go out and treat if the vet refers, and he refers specifically as an emergency case. And then I would do my own professional risk assessment to see that I'm safe, the client's safe, and the wider public stays safe. And so I just don't think that we at the moment are entirely emergency practitioners. I think that goes over to the vet. But what do you think?
Well, I think it's a really interesting question, but we're definitely, from a canine perspective, we're not an emergency service. If it's an emergency, life-threatening service, it goes back to the vet. And when you say 3 times, how long's your career been? Because I think we were trying to work it out. We've got about 60 years practice between us, which is a bit scary. But yes, so for me, we are essential to so many dogs that they have happy, healthy lives. But I think to try and search whether you're on a list or not, I think professionally and ethically, it was a very clear message from our government, from the RCVS, from the BVA, stay at home, you know, support our NHS staff, which I did 14 years in the NHS, and I've got some great friends there on the front line, and save lives, in particularly this period of time where we're in this really serious shutdown and stoppage time. So, but I do feel we are essential in normal times, but I think what people are doing and looking at those words and trying to make the business fit that. And I think the professional associations across the board called it out and said, stop working. And that was on the 23rd, 24th of March. So anything to add to that, Joe?
No, I think you've covered basically what I would have, yeah, no, I think that's it. It's really unfortunate. And I know it's really putting a lot of people in a difficult position, not least the animals and the owners. But I think really we've got to lead by example and only really see true emergencies if the vet deems them true emergencies.
Yeah, and I think that's the other thing. All normal vetting has stopped. They're only doing emergencies, life-saving procedures. They've all the, you know, everything else has been cancelled. These are the most unusual and challenging times for the wonderful animals and their owners, you know, that we have built, and we share this unified passion for our work, Joe. And, you know, so that's what we want to discuss, some kind of strategies of how to support the owners. So my next question is really, can you sort of share some of the opportunities we could take out of this dark time? What are our opportunities in the stoppage and shutdown?
I think that we're always running around like scalded cats. We're always working full flat out, whether it's work in the NHS, work in a private work, trying to combine with the family and the kids, etc. And we just don't take the time quite often to develop the wonderful ideas that we have about our business. We may have an idea that floats through our head, but then it's gone and we don't get that time. So a big opportunity, I would have thought, was to actually take time and just think and develop your ideas that you may have. Certainly won't be a waste of time. The second thing I would think would be useful and would be an opportunity is evaluate your business at the moment. I'm doing the jobs that I like and are fun and the owners that I want to go and see. And very often it's not the most business-like situation. I don't make an awful lot of money out of it. So what I tend to do is do the things I like. But I would give myself the advice is actually to take the time to work out what's for fun, what's to promote my business, and what is to pay the bills and make the money. And it's absolutely fine if you decide that quite a few of your activities are you're just doing them for fun, then that's great. But be honest with yourself and just make sure that you're not doing, you know, that you get a nice balance with that. The other thing I think would be a big opportunity is those of us that treat animals regularly or treat the same clients regularly. Maybe we go in and do competitive checks once a month or once every 6 weeks. It's very often that I think sometimes the clients take for granted what a high level of work or care or performance that they are demanding from their horses. And sometimes maybe if you're not there for a couple of weeks, and this might be quite controversial, but if you're not there doing your stuff, keeping things at an optimal level, it might be that you can actually look yourself and reflect whether you're doing a good job or whether the horse does perfectly well without you. And you might see that and reflect on it, but also it gives the owners time to reflect on that as well. The other thing actually, and it's really, I think, don't underestimate taking time to personally recharge. So taking time to bake with the kids, do exercise, do some yoga for your knee, eat well, sleep well, just taking time. This last 2 weeks, I have spent half an hour every day and I've exercised for one way or another. And I know that maybe doesn't sound very much to some people, but that for me, to do that regularly and daily, I'm doing some yoga. And it's my own personal yoga type of thing for me, a bespoke treatment for me. And so I think I'm feeling better. So I don't underestimate the time, taking some time to be a bit selfish and recharge your batteries. So I'm not quite sure. I think that's probably all the opportunities I can think about. Have you come across anything that you've been doing, Barb, that you feel is helping you or is going to be good for your business?
Yes, definitely. And I think you're exactly right. Busy clinicians, we're very busy and we're kind of firefight, and we're so busy when we're treating our patients, doing our record keeping day to day. We have ideas, but we rarely have the time to follow through. So I think if we look at it as opportunities, and also that work-life balance, both of us, we've been challenged by that, and we're very passionate about our work, and sometimes that work-life balance gets a bit out of sync. And so it's a good time for reflection and doing something for yourself. And I'm definitely doing that, but I'm also taking this time to look at how my business can evolve and go back into practice, because these are such strange and challenging times. And I'm really fearful as a face-to-face hands-on practitioner that the mindset is going to change so much towards our industry. So looking at strategies to really support the industry back into work, and all the people I know are finding it so difficult not having any income coming in. So that time to reflect is something I snatch at, but at the moment I'm getting lots of time, and having chats with you and catching up with other practitioners all over the world has been really brilliant, I think, as well. Time to connect up with people, catch up with them. Anything you want to add there, Jo?
No, I think you've hit it on the head, and I would concur with the catching up with people. I think because so many people know that I'm at home, I've had lots of emails and calls, and I think I've been busier than ever, really. So yeah, no, I would agree, but don't underestimate the personal recharge. We very rarely get that. I mean, people say, oh, well, I was off work when I was on maternity leave, or I was ill. That's not a personal recharge. That's a survival period of time. But I mean, I can't remember any time that I've been off work for this length of time without being ill or being off to have children. So yeah, don't underestimate that. Use the time wisely.
Thank you, Jo. That's really helpful. And so this kind of leads into that positivity. What can we do to get positive moments? So I'm just wondering what your ideas are. How can we keep engaged, with our clients, our database that we've built up over time? So what can we do in this time, and what are your ideas about that?
Well, I can tell you what I'm doing. I'm calling all patients as I would have had their appointments booked over the next week or so, and that's great because I have the note and I have seen these horses fairly closely. So I'm calling them to see how they are. We're actually really good at triaging on the telephone, because we more or less do that every time we pick up a referral, because we need to see, and we really need to check that that horse should be coming to us and not going back to the vet. So I think our triage skills are actually really good, and being able to call people, especially with horses that you've seen recently, is a really easy thing. I've been calling people and then giving them maybe some bodywork techniques, and so I've been speaking to them and then nipping out to the field and grabbing a muddy pony and doing the technique on them, and then filming it just on my phone, nothing special, nothing fancy, and then WhatsApping that over to people, and I think they feel a bit more supported with that. It's difficult. We kind of leave our clients in the lurch a little, or they can feel that they've been left in the lurch a bit when we suddenly withdraw the amount of support we usually give them and their animal. And so I think it's really important to keep in touch with them and continue with the treatment at a distance. So advice on maintenance, and that's really what I'm doing, giving them techniques that they can do. I'm quite lucky in that I've got some resources from my teaching, videos, etc., that I can pass on to people as well. But also I think what's been quite useful, I've been thinking lately about what I do when I'm looking at rehab cases and horses that I'm following after rehab. And maybe sometimes telling owners what to look for if there is a problem. Because, if you've been seeing a horse regularly, you're obviously looking at that every month or so and checking. And what are you checking for? You're checking that the compensatory movements aren't coming back. The behavior that was caused by pain and dysfunction is not creeping back. So I think sometimes just to reiterate to the owner what to look for if their horse is deteriorating or at early stage, I think that can very often reassure owners that there's not a huge amount of problem with their horse. So I think that's more or less what I'm doing for my owners. A lot of my owners have stopped riding but which is probably better, better for the horse. But they still want to do some groundwork, etc., which we send out films for them to follow a program. And I don't think there's any harm if you feel that your client and your environment, clients and environment can warrant it. I don't think there would be any harm in charging a small amount for that if that's what you want to do. I'm not charging, but that's because I'm probably a bit soft and I maybe should be. But I think that's a really nice way to keep engaged with them, so that your business is so much stronger when we do all get back to work. And also the other thing, actually, just remembered, talks for clubs and riding clubs. Zoom, everybody's doing Zoom at the moment. I hadn't heard about Zoom until about a couple of weeks ago, so you always live and learn. So yeah, talks for riding clubs, pony clubs, even just groups of owners at liveries, just doing a Skype talk, even for 5-6 of your owners, if you get them all working through Zoom, and just talks and a chat about their horses. I think owners definitely miss talking about their horses. And if they're not allowed to go to the livery yard as well, some of our owners have been excluded from the livery yards at the moment. So that's a nice way of them to be able to talk about their horses and talk about the concerns that they may have. And it will all make your business so much stronger at the end of the day when we get back to normal. So I think that's most of what I'm doing on the equine side. What are you doing for the canine side?
Well, that's really interesting, Jo. And like you, we're using a triage a lot. But what we've done is we've tiered it. So exactly the same. We've actually created a calls list, so a courtesy call, which is free, and that runs from about 10 to 20 minutes, checking with the clients when they would normally have come in. But we've actually upped it, so a little bit more regular contact for the ones that we had to cancel, and the ones that we know need that bit more support, because the owners are feeling so lost. So nurturing our community of very committed, loyal owners at this time when they've lost all their normal vet, routine vet checks, everything like that. So we've then developed a call, like a triage, but a call where we can do like an in-depth consultation, 30 to 45 minutes, and we're charging for that. And we're charging what's relevant for our geographical area. And they book that up, whereas the courtesy call flows from us to them. And we've also designed a hub for them. And so this is a hub where we've put really valuable information for canine clients. And that's free. They have access to that, and we keep adding to that. And then the other thing is we've kind of developed a private chat community for our clients. And we weren't sure if that would take off, but it's been amazing. People posting pictures of their dogs, sharing and building that community, because we're very rural in Suffolk as well. So I think that's been a very positive move. And again, that's all free. But the book consultations, definitely we're moving towards that, over these challenging times. And we were surprised how much that has been taken up, to be honest.
And what platform have you got your chat on?
So the chat, we've used a private group in Facebook, because most of our clients are on that, the ones that are on that. But the other tech that I've used to build the hub is something kind of like a secret private hub that only they get access to. And actually, it's really interesting because I've used that same piece of tech to develop a really expansive resource for everybody who's listening in today. At the end of it, I'm going to flag it up how they get there. And we're using different tech and things we've never really experienced before. And I think the other thing, the opportunities is, like, for me, every day is a school day, and my tech journey I've been on for a few years. I'm getting a little bit more competent, still make terrible mistakes, but really finding that all my CPD training that I've opted to do for my business over the last few years, I've got this time now to consolidate and really, really get it done. So these are things we've wanted to do for years for our clients and just haven't had that time because we're so busy. So that's the positive. We've actually achieved so much and we've had productive days but it's a very different way to work for us. So yeah, but it's nurturing your client base. They will come back, but you've got to nurture them and support them. And they're devastated. They've lost their contact with us. They've lost their contact with the vets. So we're trying to fill that gap with really positive things from a therapeutic point of view. Anything to add to that?
I need to talk to you about the tech later, because I'm a bit of a troglodyte on tech.
Yeah, well, the thing is, I think we both are, Joe, but it's just like, and I've been scammed so many times. It's taken years to get to this point, to develop this tech and understand how to use it. And actually, it's my friend now to reach out, because we're so lucky working at the Royal Veterinary College for 10, 11 years together. We've met so many amazing therapists, and they're worldwide now. So this means I can now get back in touch with people I might not have seen for so long. So it's finding what fits your practice. And there's some really good pieces out there you can trial for free and see if you like it. Don't be like me, buy lots of packages and then find it's just not what you need. So that's where it's coming from me. Well, anything to add to that?
Yeah, you instigated my son for saying, so I'm gonna hound Angus to help me with the tech. And
perfect. That's what you do. That's what's great about the children. They're so they're just not defeated by anything like that, but I take it quite personally. But we have, again, in the resource I've developed, lots of links, and there's another person who's offered a free template. So we've put some of that in the resource that I'll link up to everybody at the end. So I think if we have one more question, and then we might dive to ask the questions. I'm watching them build up. We've got 11 there. So if we kind of just explore, so we're saying how to engage our clients. That's another positive thing. What can we do to strengthen our businesses when we're working on reduced funds? Because some people have no income. Some people, like myself, zero income and massive outgoings, because I run a clinic and a hydrotherapy center. So what can we do to reduce those? Sort of optimize our business strategies to really get through these hard times?
Yeah, I mean, I've been thinking about this quite closely, because I do want to use this time productively. And it sounds really, really boring, but look at where you've been, where you're going, and yes, that comes in part of what we've talked about before with developing the good ideas, but actually look at the business plan and try and plan what you're going to do based on this period of reduced income. And it takes time to do that. And very often we just, again, don't have that time to sit down and do it. And it's one of the things, I was involved in building an app recently, and I had to write the business plan all the time. It's one of the things that I really found was a chore, but actually it's a bit like your reflective pieces for your CPD. It really becomes quite useful once you get time. So do get your business plan up to date. One of the things you can do, a lot of people are very key informative, and obviously that's your shop window, so you want your website to be as good as possible. Now I know you can't do it yourself. I know that creating a website is expensive, or can be expensive. So I've done a few of them lately for me and for different people, and spoken to a lot of IT guys when we were developing the app. And one of the things that always comes across is that if you want a developer to make a website that really excites you and really defines you as a business, you have to produce really great copy, really great content in terms of the text, the photographs that go onto it, where the photographs sit in terms of related to the text, and the whole tone of it. And it does take a lot of time to do this. You can't just say to a website developer, okay, I'm a equine physiotherapist and I want a brilliant website. That's a bit like saying to a builder, okay, I want you to build me a fantastic house. Here's a pile of bricks. You need to put yourself into it, and it does take a huge amount of time. But I promise you, if you take that time now, you don't have to spend the money on the developer. Just take the time now so you're ready to go when you are earning. And the other big thing that I've found to my expense, both time-wise and costly, is what developer are you going to use? And really, again, I've spoken to loads of tech people over the last sort of 8-9 years, and what seems to come out is word of mouth, a bit like our profession. You have a look and see what website you like, see who the developer is, contact the business that was developed for, say, was this guy on time? Did he do it to budget? Did he communicate with you? Did he overstretch himself? Therefore, he ignored you for a week and then suddenly everything had to be done all at once. And did you get what you wanted? And that's really, I think, the best way of a non-techie person finding someone that will put together a great website. So take time to develop the content for your website, but don't worry too much about actually getting somebody engaged to, because obviously you're short of cash. Make resources. As I said earlier, I'm quite lucky in that I've got quite a few videos, etc., of things I'm doing, and take loads and loads of pictures. It doesn't matter of what. Funny pictures of your kids, funny pictures of the sheep outside. If you go into talking and teaching people, they're great things to have. Just have resources that you can use for anything. It could be that you want to use them for writing an article for a magazine or writing a newsletter for your local riding club. But if you take time at the moment now to take great pictures, then it's never a waste of time, because you always have that there forever for whatever you want to do. Identify new clients. Think in your area. We know we talked before about maybe thinking that it wasn't such a great idea to travel 2 hours to see a nice little old lady with her pony and get a nice piece of cake and then come back and maybe earn 20 quid. That's great. Do that. But then if you actually sit down and think who is in your area that could be a potential new client, then again, it's not just rushing about. You've actually got targeted clients that might actually make you some money. Documentation for your note taking and also for your invoicing. Have a look at all the systems that are out there. Some of them will suit you, some of them won't suit you. Try and engage and find and research and find out what might be quite useful to have. Go on to the chat lines for your professional bodies, your discussion groups, see who's using what. Again, lots of these things have 30-day trials. You could do a third one needing to rush and be familiar with that tech before you invest in it. And hopefully you don't have to invest in that until you're back earning. And last but not least, get your CPD and all your reflective summaries up to date. And I know that you and I have very similar ideas, Barb, about CPD, but hugely important. And trying to do as much online, as much free, lots of productive reading. All of these things, again, will save you time and put you in a much stronger position. But I think the CPD thing is definitely what we've been talking about over the last couple of weeks when we've been trying to get this together. So what else? I think that's me about exhaustion. What about you?
Joe, we're just losing you a little bit on the picture. I think it's just the movement. I think sometimes, and I know it's all right. It's and I think a few people are just coming in on the chat. I did notice some stuff going out. I think it's really hard if you don't have a background in business or you've never been in self-employed before, for people if they haven't had much business background in their courses. But somebody else pointed out there's loads of really good resources online, and I've put a lot of those into the additional resource that you can get at the end. I think, like you said, with the website, it's our shop window, but actually by making the copy, it helps you reflect about your practice ethos. What are you about? What are your key messages you want to send out? And having been involved with website designers over time, I've realized actually some really lovely graphics, some really lovely visuals and key phrases that encapsulate your practice, your service is what's going to be great. And to write it for your target audience, not your colleagues, you know, so you have to do the copy to get your message, and you can kind of use that time to reflect on your practice ethos, which is different to a mission statement, and put that into your website or your web page or your Facebook page. And business planning, we've put some ideas about business planning, but there's loads of great free resources online that you can find to help you. But I think it really comes down to deciding what kind of service you want to offer and seeing how we can maybe evolve it over this time and for the future as well. So yeah, I'm absolutely with you on all of that, using those skills and pulling in skills from maybe other people that you know. So there's a few things to think about, I think, where maybe designing leaflets and making leaflets aren't going to be that interesting to our population now. So maybe taking that time to think about developing an e-leaflet. You know, people aren't going to want to shake hands for a while. They're not going to want to be handling things that other people have been handling. So maybe taking that opportunity to think, where can I take what I've got, the tools I've got and the resources, and developing them more. But yeah, anything you want to add to that, Jo?
No, I think we're just about there on that one.
Okay, so I've got a few more questions that people have definitely been asking me, sorry. And if you could just share your thoughts on how can we save money? So have we got some money saving tips for therapists out there who are really struggling because their income's, you know, bottomed out?
Yeah, I mean, this is a huge problem for everybody, but I would say don't panic. We, especially in the equine world, we survived foot and mouth here, where we didn't really work fully for around about. We're not earning, but in terms of your business, we're not spending so much either. I know certainly I've not even used a tank of petrol over the last 2 or 3 weeks. So look at your basics. And I actually found it really useful to look at the basic costs that I had and then work out how many clients per week I needed just to cover these basic costs. Now, that at the moment looks abysmal because it's zero, or maybe you're earning a little bit from your online consultations. But what I think you can do is then you can average your clients out. So if you decide, for instance, you needed 10 clients a week to pay for your basic costs, then when you go back to work, then obviously you need to find a few more that keeps that average going. And that kind of helped me to keep count of how I was doing. I mean, certainly I'm nobody to ask about financial advice because I'm useless about making. But what I did learn then was, in order not to go bust, I had to make all my yearly costs monthly costs, which sounds very basic. But I certainly hadn't done it until times were tight. At the moment as well, what you do have is some of you will have government funding, which is great. And even if you think that it's only the very minimum sort of £400 a month, it's worth the time to apply for it and find out. So speak to your accountants and speak to the government people, tax people, and find out what you're entitled to and apply for it. Because I think we're so bad at it because we just rush about it. And we don't actually think. You think, oh well, that's only going to fund me for so much, of a week. But if you get a whole week funded, in 1 month, then it's far less clients at the end of the day that you have to catch up with. The other thing I would say is be very sure that you've collected all the money that the insurance companies owe you. At that time, foot and mouth year, which is 2001, I was due quite a lot of money from various insurance companies. And so at that time, I'm afraid we made the business decision that we wouldn't actually allow clients to have the insurance pay us directly. We always have since then insisted that the client pays us directly and then they claim from their insurance. And then if there's any hiccup with the insurance, it's the client that takes the hit and not you. But I know at that point I had quite a few insurance claims outstanding. So hassle the insurance companies. I think we are usually quite a nice bunch of folk. And very rare, we think, oh, well, everybody's in this crisis and it's awful. Insurance companies are there to pay the money. So hassle them. You've got the time. Phone them or email them. And if you can actually get to speak to somebody, hassle them to pay the insurance claims that you're due. I know it sounds obvious, but you've maybe had something on order. I'm sorry, Mr. Electromedical Company, but, use the money that you've set aside for new kit to pay for the basics. Another one that actually might be a bit more pertinent to equine people is very often we have quite nice four-wheel drive cars because we say to ourselves in the wintertime we have to go to up muddy tracks and into farmyards and all the rest of it. But is there a possibility, and look into the possibility, how much would it save you to put your four-wheel drive off the road for a couple of months and use mum or hubby's or somebody's little car, running one car within a family? I know that my car is one of my biggest expenses, and maybe it might not be financially viable, but it's certainly worth, if you've got the time, have a look at it and see whether it's worth taking your bigger four-wheel drive car off the road for a little while. That's unless you go there to hide from the family. And last thing, obviously, NHS, those physios that are registered with HCPC, look at your NHS hours, and if you want to earn some more money, then I think that's an opportunity that's open at the moment. And obviously there's the various government emails, etc., out, electronic ways of applying within the NHS. So I think that's all of my tips, other than don't take any financial advice from me, go to an expert.
Yeah, we're not professing to be financiers in any way, or our background in business has definitely been something that's evolved with our knowledge. But I think from a canine point of view, that's where there's a real difference between our worlds, Joe, because I'm running a centre and I've got rent to pay. I've got electricity to pay. I did a YouTube video on shutting down because, it was really important people understood the long-term impact. If you drain a pool, you might lose your motors because they're meant to work 24/7. They don't like drying out. I think for people, if they've got a centre, we've got to be able to get to it or get someone there every week. It's really important to flush our toilets, run our showers, check our chlorine levels. So what I've done, put to bed my water tank for the underwater treadmill, put to bed the pool, got the chlorine up a little bit higher and keep it there rather than at the normal level. So I've got mine at 5 parts per million rather than at between 3 and 4. And for us, the outgoings are huge. That's the killer, really. I know we're getting a bit of help with the salaries if you employ people, but the running costs of a centre are prohibitive. So we have very high running costs, low profit margins. So, the hydrotherapists and the physiotherapists who are centre-based are really hard hit at the moment. So really feeling that. And again, I put some ideas and tips into extra additional resource that I'll let you know about later as well. I'm just going to skip over now, Joe, to the Ask a Question. Now, these questions, we have an upvoting, so that means you can vote on which one you want. I'm going to start at the ones at the top. If you could just stop upvoting for the moment, because when I go into the questions, if you upvote, I'll lose the question. So I'm going to do the first kind of 3 or 4, and I'm also going to timestamp them. So when I start answering, I'll timestamp them, and then when I finish, I timestamp them. So if you want to go back and just see one particular question, you can do that on the replay as well. So Joe, our first question is from Paul Watts, and it says, how do you use your time productively while the centre is not open? And we're going to explore that a little bit more. So Joe, I know you haven't got a centre, but you do have a service. How are you using your time productively at the moment? So we were going to kind of look at that a little bit more in depth about policies, procedures, protocol, looking at your service, modifying it. Anything else you'd like to add to that?
I think what we've already talked about is what I'm spending my time. I'm finding that I'm really, really busy from the minute I get up. I'm dealing business planning and looking, etc., and actually just dealing with my clients, and they're actually coming first. And that I'm speaking to them, and then whatever they need, I'll trot out and take, film of ponies, etc. So I'm finding my time is, I'm trying to be very organized, in that I'm starting work at 9, and and having a break at lunchtime, and then trying to get finished again by sort of 5 or so. I think that's quite important, because the other day I forgot we were supposed to speak on Sunday, and I thought it was Saturday all day until one of the boys. So I think it's really important to keep that sort of work focus, and otherwise you end up just working all the time. But more or less what we've talked about already, I think is the main thing.
I hope that helps, Paul. And I think really, there's 2 focuses here for us with a hydrotherapy centre and a integrated physiotherapy and hydrotherapy service, is that our key thing are our clients. We want to nurture this group of people that we've built up over many years, and provide a service for them, keep the communication, keep the connection, and keep the support. So that's keeping us quite busy, but we're also thinking of building clinical tools, looking at resources, getting our policies and procedures and protocols up to date, and looking where we can take the business forward. So as Joe, you said, keeping us really busy, and I hope that helps, Paul, and gives you a few ideas. So I'm just going to shut that question down. So the next one we've got is from Jeanette. If the shutdown, the question is, sorry, I'll just timestamp it. Jeanette said, if the shutdown lasts 12 weeks, which is likely, the animals will suffer, how can we deal with this? And I know Jeanette's running a hydrotherapy service, and this is where we don't want any animals to suffer, but equally we don't want people to die. So there's this real balance of listening to the government, our BVA, our RCVS, and following that professionally and ethically, keeping close so we can crush this peak of deaths in our country. So it's not just our nation, it's worldwide. It's just, if you talked about this in January, nobody would believe it. But here we are, trying to minimize deaths, which is just the most dreadful thing to even have to say. So by building a community for your database, by getting resources out, by doing the things Joe and I were discussing, calling regularly, keeping contact, triaging, doing some things with videos where they can capture video, you can see it, giving them advice. It's a really important part of our service that we can do. And we definitely don't want any animal to suffer, because that's the thing that unites this whole industry. There's about 1,200 of us in the UK. And we all are passionate about healthcare and the welfare of dogs, horses, cats, exotics, whatever species you're working with. It's our driving and binding force. And I feel this is a real time for us to unify across all professional associations and work together and support each other, because we don't want to see people going out of business. We all know how hard we all work. And I think just being kind and professional and supportive to everybody in the industry at this time will really help us get back into work. So we don't know if it's going to be 12 weeks. We just have to take it moment by moment, and we're just disseminating that information, as we get it. So I hope that helps, Jeanette. Bernadette, so we've had 4 votes for this. So Joe, this is a question for you, and I think we've gone through this, but maybe to summarize the point. So Bernadette's question, which is great: how are people supporting clients through this time? So again, can you summarize some of the points we've said, Joe?
With keep in contact with them, keep speaking to them about their particular horse, use your notes that you already have on that horse to be very bespoke to them, advise on the maintenance, and advise on what to look for if their animal is deteriorating. And I found that they're really appreciative of that, because no matter how many times you say when you visit, that's what they don't remember. And be prepared to go out and video yourself doing a technique or an assessment technique or a treatment technique that would be bespoke to that horse or animal. But I think just by being there and being in contact with them, you'll support your clients in the best way you can.
Yeah, and Joe, just reiterating that, and I think it's nurturing your client base, and it's definitely connecting with them, and not forgetting, as experienced practitioners, people with skills, we're looking at this is quite straightforward to us because we see it day in, day out, but the owners don't remember all the information we give them, and sometimes they can't recall the information. So they're so appreciative of hearing that information that you're telling them each time they come and see you. And I think developing some kind of client hub or service, giving them some resources to think about, as well as keeping in contact, is really useful. I hope that helps, Bernadette, and gives you some ideas there. Thank you for the question. So Joe, again, we can share this between us, but somebody's upvoted, so I'm really sorry. The question I was just about to read out has disappeared. So if you could just not upvote while I'm timestamping, I'll try and find that question next. We've got a question here from Jeanette. So I'm going to stamp it, start answering. So Jeanette, for physios, it is easy for them to be able to suggest exercises that they can do at home during this time. However, hydrotherapists who are not physios are not allowed to prescribe. How can we word things to stay within the rules? So if I start that off, Joe, and then throw that to you, physios aren't prescribing. We're giving advice, and depending on your training and experience, all the people who've trained with their level 3 certificate in hydrotherapy at K9HS Services definitely have a whole range of things they can offer advice and husbandry to their clients. So within your scope of practice, staying within that, we're not saying we're prescribing, but what we are doing is we're offering an advanced advice service on the healthcare issues that were bespoke, that were very particular for that client that we've seen. So we're not seeing new cases, we're building and nurturing the client caseload that we have built and have got established. Anything you want to add to that, Joe?
No, I think that, I would say that in the equine world, we're not diagnosing. We probably, as physios, are prescribing a rehabilitation program and exercise. But I think that's invaluable to keep in contact with your clients, because apart from anything else, it reinforces their belief that you are actually seriously interested in them and their animal. And I think that will help them and give them something to speak to that's experienced in the husbandry side of things. And I think probably the equivalent in the equine world, we don't have so many hydrotherapists, but we have coaches and trainers. And I would be encouraging the coaches and trainers, if they're not still teaching, to be contacting their clients just to chat to them about it and reassure them that things will be okay.
Yeah, thank you, Joe. And I think just adding on that, you're absolutely right. We don't diagnose, and maybe it's language again, which is really interesting because I don't use the word prescribe. What I do is I devise an individual treatment plan for each dog in our care. So I don't use that word prescribe. So maybe, Jeanette, I'm not understanding quite what you're meaning there, but we don't diagnose, but we definitely advise specifically for each client and each owner client and each, animal patient or animal client that we see. So I hope that helps, Jeanette. So I'll just click that one off. I think don't upvote now because this is the one I was just doing. So this is from, I'm really sorry. I'm not sure how to pronounce your name. I think it's Laurie or Law. Beautiful name, but I'm not quite sure. So I do apologize if I haven't got that right. And it's just, does anybody do distance web Skype consulting? If yes, how much do you charge for it? Joe, have you got some ideas with that? And we've had a comment here from lovely Sarah Cruikshank in New Zealand, who I wasn't sure was going to make it, who we both know really well. And Sarah said, yes, we are, and it's been well received so far. They charge around 75% of the initial consult. The owners have been very grateful to continue to receive our support, especially for their post-op animals. So thank you, Sarah, for that. It's really invaluable. But Joe, what are your thoughts about distance web Skype consulting?
I think firstly, I need to contact, and I absolutely think it's valid that we do charge.
Yes,
so
we do.
That's certainly not a criticism. So that's fine. I do quite a lot of distance Skyping and WhatsApping and spend quite a lot of my Saturday mornings looking at videos of horses trotting up and down from other physiotherapists. And I'm very happy as part of my clinical educator and mentor system to do that. So it works fairly well. I find that it works very well to work as a second opinion physiotherapist, and so you have a therapist that's on the ground that's actually seeing and doing and working, and actually it becomes very easy because they've tried all the obvious things. You can throw in the wacky things and seem clever, but I think Skyping and videoing and putting it through Messenger, WhatsApp or whatever, invaluable. And I think we probably will find that we do more of it after this crisis as people become more familiar with the tech. So definitely advise anybody to give it a go, and it can be very effective.
Yeah, I agree. We're doing a lot of online kind of communication and in-depth consultation. And like Sarah, we're making a charge for it. And I think it probably reflects geographically where you are in the country. So pricing is very geographically sensitive and species sensitive, and which country you're in as well. So Sarah's in New Zealand. And just want to say hi to everybody in New Zealand because I get so much support from you all. And we're thinking, everybody in the UK is thinking about everybody else globally, but a special place in my heart for Sarah Cruikshank, a great friend. So thank you. I hope that helps give you a little bit of an idea, but I think we separate our courtesy calls, which are keeping and nurturing our clients, from our in-depth consultation. So we're offering both, and I'm really surprised how well that's been received and how grateful the owners are for that contact, that reinforcement of their program, and that connection with you, because everyone's feeling so isolated at the moment. So thank you. That's a good question there. The next question, Joe. This is from Rebecca Robinson. And I can see a picture there. So she's a hydrotherapist. I've been told not to do any sort of work towards the business as I have furloughed myself and my staff. How does this work? Even marketing is classed as working. Furloughed staff are not allowed to work in any capacity. Well, if I start from that, you've really got to follow the government guidelines. If you're furloughed and your staff are furloughed, you cannot work for anybody else, or you cannot work for that period. So that's a choice you made when you went through that furlough process. And, it's really important that you abide by the UK legislation. So I don't know if you've got anything to add to that question, Joe.
No, I mean, I wouldn't be an expert at all in it. I do believe that if you are taking a grant as a self-employed person, you can continue to work. But
yeah,
furloughed, I think I wouldn't really know. But
get advice, get professional advice on that, Rebecca. So basically, I furloughed the people I've employed, but I'm still working. So and I'm not entitled to getting anything. I've kind of slipped through there a little bit. So that's something you could maybe take professional advice if you wanted to come out of that furlough period yourself, so you could still use this time productively for your practice. It's something to consider. I hope that helps, and I'm sorry we don't have that, much more information on that. Yeah, and definitely, I think Bernadette's just thrown something out there. It's really important to use this time for clinical reflection, business reflection, CPD and training, advancing your practice, progressing your skills, extending your scope of practice, so we can use it very productively and positively. So Joe, I've got a question from Jill Hall here, so I'll just timestamp it. Do you Wise Gems have any tips for video consults? I'm so used to being hands-on. I'll pass that to you, Joe. I think that's from an equine perspective. So what are your thoughts on that?
Hi, Jill. I know Jill well. You know me, I'm really not very tech great. So don't be too concerned about your videoing technique. Videoed myself assessing a part of a horse that I would like the owner to do some palpation with. I get the owner, if I want the horse walked up and down, I get the owner to video that. If I want the horse trotted up and down, don't be scared to go back to them and say, that was great, but if I could just have, the whole horse rather than just its pretty head, then that's good. So don't be scared to go back and ask them. So get them to video assessment that you would be doing, and then you have to modify your treatment. So I know that you won't be able to treat at the usual high standard, you won't be able to treat at all, but you will be able to give maintenance techniques, body work, myofascial techniques that are specific to that horse. And actually, for that reason, I have not taken on any new clients this last couple of weeks. I've only been advising clients where I know the horse. I will, of course, speak to any new clients and try and give them reassurance over the phone. But I'm only really giving advice through the phone, through sending my videos to horses that I know, just to try and keep my advice pertinent. But I think probably, to summarize, do the best you can. You're not going to be able to do the job you can when you're there on site, but get the information you want and give a modified response.
Okay, thank you, Joe. I'll just timestamp that. Thank you very much, Jill. I hope that helps, Jill, giving you some ideas. And definitely from that point of view, we're not taking new clients on. We're nurturing our database and supporting our clients. We'll definitely talk to new clients, but we're not in a position to take anybody new on. We're just really working at keeping our sort of really expansive database of clients who we've seen over, the last sort of 12, 13 years at K9HS, supporting them, or clients we've seen and we are not seeing currently, but clients we know. But they're all dogs that we've got a background and information on. So we're not doing anything video-wise with brand new clients. I've got a question here from Richard, and I'm not quite sure which Richard it is, but we do have Richard who comes in from Spain. So Tom has very kindly put some information there, but I'm not sure it's that Richard. So if we start answering, how does a business actually survive if there's a total lockdown for a minimum of 12 weeks? What's your thoughts on that, Joe?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're just talking financially and you don't have any reserves, then you don't have any government help, we can't magic a miracle cure. I think maybe you have to try and find some work. I mean, there are other industries that are actually working really hard. So maybe for the few weeks, if you can, and they're recruiting, even if it's, you know, Tesco stacking shelves to help you take over. Remember that your costs will, well, certainly in equine world, our costs are down, as well as, and your child, you know, anybody who has children, your childcare is down. So yeah, costs are down. Try and find something else. If you can, actually, that's one thing I would say, that if you can find work that is pertinent to what you're doing and would help develop and help your networking with what you're doing, then that would be something to do. So maybe some, in the equine world, maybe a livery yard would be wanting some help when the clients aren't there doing the DIY, that sort of thing, so that you can work on your handling, husbandry, that type of thing. But I think it's, you know, we don't have a magic wand on it. If you don't have any reserves, and unfortunately you don't have any government help, then the only thing I think we can say is try and find something else. But I would, on the positive side, say try and find something that actually is going to help you network for when you do get back to running your normal business.
That's you know, that's interesting, Joe. And the other thing, I think, from Richard's perspective, in Spain, they're so much more strict than here. We've still got cars going around, people are still wandering around, whereas there, they can't go out, they can't walk their dog. That, you know, they're in lockdown, whereas we aren't in a lockdown, but we're in a stay at home, save lives, support your NHS. But there's still people out and about here. So I really don't know, Richard, from your perspective, but like Joe says, trying to find any kind of work to support your passion. Yeah, total lockdown in Spain, which is really difficult, yes. Definitely. Yeah. So thank you, Richard, for that. And I'm sorry we can't be more help. So I think if we go back to a couple more things, we'll come back to the questions there. We've got a few more questions to come back to, Joe, but we had a few other things that we wanted to just talk about. So we said about practical advice to save money. How can we minimize damage to our business? And that kind of relates a bit to what Rich is saying. So how can we minimize that damage to our business so we can reopen, we can start our business, you know, in months to come, or whenever? Yeah,
I think, again, trying to be positive and not waste the time that we've got, which we've already talked about quite a lot. But one of the big things that I think is behave well now. I absolutely am heart gutted for poor Richard and but I think behave well now. Get organized, come back stronger, because I think it's certainly as a newer profession, we have to prove our professionalism. And if we behave really well now and come back organized and strong, and, you know, be ready to come back whenever that might be. So have a plan. How are you going to actually contact your clients, let them know that you're back at work? How are you going to reorganize your life? So children out of nursery, are they going to be able to go back to nursery, or will you have to find some other alternative? Have a plan to go back to work so that you're off work for the minimum amount of time, because if you don't organize all these things, then it may take a week after we're allowed to go back for you to actually get going. So keep up and be ready to go back whenever. So it's almost get on your marks, get ready, so that when they say go, we're ready to go. So yeah, that's one thing. The other thing I would say is try so hard to keep up your registrations with your professional bodies, etc., because you work jolly hard to get that registration in the first place in most cases. So try, if you possibly can, to keep these up financially. If you keep paying them, most of them you can pay every month. Quite a lot of the professional bodies have delayed their renewals, etc. So, you know, try really hard if you can. It's one of the things that I think it's an essential. Keep up with the essentials. Watch out. I know that the government are saying that they may well defer the July payment for us, but if you possibly can, try and see if you can keep your tax money actually saved up rather than deferring it till January, because if we do have a quiet year, then it's going to be an awfully big bill in January. So be careful about that. And I think all I've got to add to what we've already said, Barb. What about you?
Yeah, no, I think you're just saying exactly what I'm feeling. You know, the professional associations are working so hard to provide extra support for the members. And I think collectively across the professional associations, and we were talking about this in the UK, but really globally, we're a small community of people who are passionate about animal welfare. We need to work together and use forums like that to support each other. We've had people already saying, someone in the UK saying to Richard, like, I might have some contacts. And so networking, communicating, working really hard to be kind and generous to each other, no matter what country, what professional association, to support this amazing industry. So we will get it back on its feet, but it's just dire times. And I think, you know, helping each other at this time is going to really reflect when we do get back into work and bring the industry forward. I think is really important. And I think also what you were talking about, when we're getting back, get ready to come back to work. You know, when do you think, from the equine perspective, when can you see yourselves getting back into work because of the nature of the work you do with horses?
Yeah, I mean, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it'll be slower for the equine practitioners. We'll have missed all the qualifiers, which means we'll have missed an awful lot of, in the UK, we'll have missed a lot of the championship. The qualifiers aren't happening, so the championships aren't going to happen. So I would think that a lot of the competitive people may well work on their young horses or whatever, and maybe we'll get those to work on, but the competition work, I think, will be slim, and so I would be planning for at least a year for them bringing back their horses in, say, January for the springtime. So I would think, you know, although it sounds a little bit, if you have got mainly a cohort of professional riders, to maybe think about planning to try and find some new clients that aren't competitive, maybe rehab centres or riding schools, or your happy hackers, who will probably be the people who engage you a lot quicker than your competition people. So I would try for that. The other thing I was thinking about, you know, those of you that are willing to or able to become clinical educators, we're always looking for more clinical educators. So, and the colleges do pay you. So when you're a bit quiet, when you come back, all you horsey practitioners, you know, try and maybe look into being a clinical educator. They do pay you quite nicely for having students with you. So, you know, that might be something that helps you over that first slower year. And I would, at this point, actually, is one of the things I really wanted to say about this is, by all means, do introductory offers, etc., for your new clients, but please don't poach from each other, because karma will come round and hit you on the back of the head. And it's not professional, and clients really don't like it in a funny way. So I think by all means, do your introductory, do your PR, all these things that we've talked about to get the business, but try not to actively poach from other practitioners. It really doesn't work well in the long term. If we all work together, as Bar said earlier, there's only 1,200 of us in the country, and there's loads more animals. I think there's 1 million horses and something like 60 million smallies. So there's loads of work for everyone. So I think behave well for that. But I know it will be slower. It certainly was after foot and mouth. It was about a year before we were back to normal.
Yeah, and I think like in the canine world, I think a lot of what you're saying will probably parallel in the athletic dog, in the agility world. I don't know. I think Maria's in the audience. Maria, who's our GB vet physio, have you got any thoughts on that? Please put a comment in there if you're listening. But I think that might be a bit slow because of competitions, rounds, all of that, the prehab. But I think in the canine world, depending if you've nurtured that community, I feel that we will come back to work quicker. They will be waiting for us and sort of knocking on our door to get back into our physiotherapy and hydrotherapy centres. So I think that's where there's probably a little bit of a difference. Tell me I'm wrong, but between the species. So, but what I think the main thing is we have to support each other professionally, ethically, and kind of as friends to make sure the industry that you and I love and have spent our whole working career in, it survives. It will evolve, but we want it to survive. So it's about working together across all the professional associations across the world to support each other is so important. So going on that point, Joe, what changes do you think we might see with what's going on?
I think in the equine world, we might find that people reduce their numbers of horses. It's very easy to collect horses. I know this. I've been there and done that. And, I think sometimes something like this makes people as many horses as I have, and sometimes they reduce the numbers. Going back to what you were talking about before, I think people will be less interested in material that they can hold, but I think there's a huge opportunity because this will advance most people's IT skills. Because we're having to communicate through tech and IT. So I think then that is something that we should be thinking about in talking to groups. Looking at records, owners may keep records more readily online now or through some digital means, whereas before it was very difficult for them to do that. So I think to be prepared for that, and also to be prepared for sometimes our clients won't have as much funds because if they're in the same position as we're in and they've not earned as much. So just to be careful and be very targeted about, we maybe have to be very targeted about the care we give and the what owner and work to what the owners can afford until they get back on their feet as well. So having a look at it from our client side and being very sympathetic to that in terms of trying to help the animal with a cost-effective way when we do get back. I think that's probably where we are with the horses, but I certainly remember that the numbers of horses people kept went into decline after the last break we had. What about your dogs?
Well, I think I'll come back to that, but I've just noticed the questions are building up again, Joe. Oh. So if you don't mind, the only trouble is, Joe, when I lose sight of you, when I lift up the questions, because my screen looks a little bit different, and we've got so many positive comments in the chat box, and I really, really appreciate it. Everyone is sharing, and these are people across professional associations. Francois has just come up. Tom's been giving advice. So many people are sharing. Jackie from Kent, and I think this is what we want. We want to breed a culture of kindness, generosity across all of the therapists who work with animals, because the one thing we all do is we all love the animals in our care. We deeply care about animal welfare. And I think this is a positive, that if we can reach out and share skills, networks. I know Tom's donated a template that's free for therapists. And, I think this is going to be culturally really positive for our industry, which have been kind of quite sunk in little groups and maybe not communicated as openly across. So I think this is a real opportunity for us to support each other and get this industry through these really dark times, which we will do. We will get back and we will do. So I'm just going to go to the questions, Joe. The question I've got here, I'm going to start answering. I'm just going to timestamp it. It's from Claire Boyle. Hello, Claire. During this period, if time is there, any literature that could be useful to read? That's an interesting question, Joe. Any literature you're thinking of particularly?
Oh gosh, I get so distracted. I go onto YouTube to look at one thing and then I follow the links that I'm. So I think my advice would be really targeted in what you want,
Yes.
you want to learn, and do a search on the academic papers of that. And also, I love to go into the references that are, so I go into an initial primary paper or book, and then I go into the references, and I absolutely love to go down the references and then hunt out the authors of the interesting ones, and that's why I can get lost for hours in it. But
yeah,
it's really productive because you do tend to follow a thread, and then at the end of the day you found out a lot about a particular topic that you wanted to learn about, and then you can narrow it down to find more about that topic. But I think to get a wide overview of the topic, and you sometimes find some wonderful references that you never would do just from reading one book or reading one particular paper. Look at that's my top tip. Look at the references and follow the authors that you feel have produced a paper that you'd be really interested and would help you with the topic you want to learn about. What about you?
Well, I just think we've all belonged to different professional associations. They're generating journal clubs, you know, and they've got access to libraries. And maybe these were things that we just didn't have the time to do when we're so busy every day with our clinical practice. So maybe this is a time, like you say, to target areas in your scope of practice you wish to expand. And maybe work with a few others, you know, find some like-minded clinicians where you support each other through that as well. So and I'm a very visual person, so I like to see videos and I like to read references. I'm old school, I like things in hard copy, whereas I like to watch visual things on a screen. So again, making a plan rather than just randomly gathering lots of paper. And I hope that helps, Claire, but really target what you're trying to, you know, explore, and doing it with one or a few people in a journal club or a few people you trust. That really motivates you to keep at it as well, because we want to be finishers. We want to be productive, but we don't want to generate a lot of extra stuff that we're not actually finishing. So, and writing up your case studies, I think that's really, really helpful as well. But thank you, Claire. Really good question.
The other thing.
So the next. Oh, sorry, Joe, go on.
Have you finished? No,
I've time-stamped it, but
yeah,
but you can go.
Gonna go? Right.
Yeah.
Use the questions from clients and colleagues, and big shout out to Become Clinical Educators from your students, to think about, oh, I'm not quite sure about that. And that's a really good way of targeting your weaknesses. And it's great because somebody else has done the work. They've targeted that for you. So if you get a question that you're not awfully sure about, use that as a topic to start your word search. Sorry, I hope that was worth the interruption from Barb's tech.
No, it's absolutely fine, Joe. Yeah, and I think that's really important. So we've created this forum, Joe and I, from the questions that we've been inundated with over the last several weeks, and we got together and said, look, let's try and answer some of these from a clinical perspective. We're not professing to be business experts or financial experts, but we do have some tips from our sort of training background and our clinical practice. So again, listen to the clients, what they're asking. I listen to what people are asking in forums, and that's where I want to go and explore. And definitely, both Joe and I, we're really big girls. We can put our hands up and say, we have no idea, and we'll go find it out. And I think having that kind of fresh look to problem solving and getting solutions is really positive. So the next question, Joe, it's from Jeanette. So I'm just going to timestamp it. Given that our potential new clients are undergoing financial hardships at the moment as well, how would you suggest targeting new clients who may be reluctant to spend money on what they still can see as a luxury?
I think that's a really good question, because it's a question that's pertinent all along, and hopefully that one, if they haven't had physiotherapy for a luxury, it's actually essential, and that if they want to carry on with what they're doing with their horse, then and they want the optimal performance, then they're going to find it useful to invest their money in it. One of the things that they could do is you could do exercise classes for a group of 2 clients, maybe. So maybe instead of them having you for an hour, I know my sessions are generally about an hour, done as introductory sessions for owners, where we've done a prescriptive pole work class for them. So they're doing groundwork, and so they pay half, and they do half an hour for each horse, because 20 minutes, half an hour of pole work is quite enough for any horse. So they will do that, and they'll give them the confidence that actually maybe we do need to do some more. So I'll be, if through an exercise class, I can point out where we could help them. And then unfortunately, it is up to them how they want to spend a buck. You know, they can buy their bottle of gin because they've run out of gin, or they can get a horse, you know, part of a partial horse physio. So it is going to be problems. Sometimes introductory offers work quite nicely. I know quite a few people do sponsored riders, and sometimes a judicious choice of your sponsored rider, if you really think that somebody could do with some help, and they really are genuinely struggling, then maybe that's your sponsored rider. But I think that's probably all I think they do have to make up their mind at the end of the day. You're going to be struggling as well when you go back to work. So try not to be, to give away too much, but perhaps, and don't defer payment. Don't say, I'll do it now and pay later, because you will have to chase that money, and it will end up being not so great. So, yeah, you can charge a little bit less for introductory, and give them group classes so that you can discuss their needs, and then they can take that decision whether they want to invest in further treatment. I think that's about all I can think of off the top of my head for horses.
Great, Jo. I'm really conscious of the time. So I want to try and get everybody's question answered. So we're going to push on, because we kind of had an idea how long this would be going. I've just seen the time and I'm going, gosh. So, but Olga's got a really good question here. And again, Sarah's come back and given some comments, which is so useful. It's, hi, everybody. I was wondering if anyone is lending equipment to their clients with the aim for them to continue with the treatment that's already been started. If yes, do you charge per day? How much do you charge, please? Thanks. Sarah's given, Sarah Cruikshank's given some information there. We definitely loan out equipment, and we definitely make a charge as well. And that's been really supportive. We give great details how to use it, and we've got actual home client units as well for various bits and pieces, not for all our kit, but we also loan them out specific bits of equipment to use under our guidance as well. So, Jo, is that something you're doing at all?
Yeah, I'm quite happy to do that, especially when if I know the horse, and especially if the horse has started on treatment. I'm not quite sure. Obviously, we've not been going long enough to see whether we would be looking at newer conditions that crop up, and doing that on Skype video assessment. I think if it is a condition that's maybe an open wound, etc., but then possibly the vet has seen it, and then we're going to have to communicate with them and take their assessment on it, as well as the video evidence. So absolutely, and I tend to charge. Do you want me to tell you how much to charge?
Well, no, I think the thing is that's going to be geographically sensitive as well, isn't
Sure.
it? So, and also it depends on your clients. So we've got some clients with like lovely older dogs, and they're using it a lot. I have, like, if they're loaning it for a bit longer, I just vary it really to fit, but it kind of reflects our normal charging. It's a percentage of our normal charging. So again, it's finding something you're comfortable with. And don't forget, if you're loaning out equipment, it will get battered. You'll need more maintenance. You might have to replace it. So just be aware, you know, that the costs of loaning it out need to cover that in the long term as well. But it's definitely something we've done for a long time. It's been really successful, but they get a lot of support, how to use it. They've got phone callers, courtesy calls regularly, but that's really worked well for the owners. Olga, I hope that's helped give you a few ideas, and thank you very much for the question. So I've got a question here from Pippa Winkworth, Joe, and it says, does insurance cover paid, non-paid distance consultations? And Samantha Rodwell has given a bit of information under there, a comment as well. Sorry, I've got messages flooding in here all over the place. So that's something that you need to have a look at, your actual insurance, the pet's insurance and your insurance as well, I think. Have you got anything else on that one, Joe, particularly?
No, I think you have to refer back to the insurance companies for it. I think we've got to be very careful and underestimate what you're going to do and undertreat things perhaps from a distance. But you know, trying to, if we can maintain the status quo at a distance, I think we're doing a jolly good job. So okay, yeah, but go back to your insurance company for that specific question.
Okay. I've timestamped that. So the next one, Claire Boyle, question coming here. Maybe you two ladies could develop some crowdcasts which could concentrate on financial planning and or website advice. Well, I've put a lot in the additional resource that I'm giving out very shortly to you. And I kind of feel we wanted to concentrate on our clinical perspective for that, Claire. And, you know, we will look forward to sort of evolving some crowdcasts, and this is an in conversation, and Joe's my invited guest speaker. So, you know, if you want us back on something, do let us know. And if you're finding this useful, please put it in the chat box. If you're finding this session useful for you as well, we'd really appreciate that. So I've got a question here from Jess Seeley. Sorry to push, but we're very short on time, and I really want to get everyone's question answered. So Jess has asked us, do you think we could return to equine work more quickly if the government measures are relaxed, as easier to social distance with equine than canine clients? I think I understand that, Jess, sorry. Yeah. So do you think we could return to equine work more quickly if the government measures are relaxed, as it's easier to social distance with horses than with dogs and owners? What are your thoughts on that, Joe?
Hi, Jess. I remember Jess was here not long ago. Yes, I think that's one of our big things. Certainly the social distancing side of it didn't particularly worry me in terms of my risk assessment. With the caveat with the horses that I knew and would needed very little restraint. So what we were doing for the week before, what I was doing for the week before we were locked down by the government, was I was the owner was, the horse was in, the owner was there on the end of a long rope at the other side of the box, the other side of the door of the box, and I was treating the horses that I know are very easy to treat. So the social distancing was actually really easy. I was sanitizing my hands and taking my top layer of clothing off when I went into my car. And yes, I think in short, yes, I think it's easier to go back to horse work than it will probably be dog work. But Barb, you're the expert on the dog side, so just got to say no.
No, I'm doing so much tech here by myself, and I've got messages coming from everywhere, including crowdcasts. So please do. I really wanted to get through the questions. I didn't want anyone to go away and think, I've asked a question, but it wasn't answered. So I'm sorry if that was a bit rushed, but I just felt it was really important, if you've asked a question, that we at least have a chance to say thank you for that and share some thoughts on it. And please put your feedback in the chat box if you found this useful. And please vote on the poll. I'm looking at the poll. So Joe, just looking at the poll, we've got 8 votes for horses, 24 for dogs, equals 7 votes. So that would really help us as well. I'd just really like to round it up, Joe, with you sharing your key message. What is your key message that you would like to get out to the animal therapy industry, not just equine, but the animal therapy industry we have invested our working life in, and we're passionate about training and sharing skills. We're passionate about clinical practice, and we're just passionate about the people that we have just been it's just been brilliant, the people I've met in my working career. And I know they're scattered all over the world, but it's just been a privilege to do what I do. And I want to see this industry survive this terrible turmoil. So what's your key message to everybody out there, Joe?
I think I would echo everything you've just said, but my thing is, please don't panic at the moment. Stay calm, strengthen your business, support your clients. Be kind to yourself, be kind to everybody else that's trying to get back to work when we get going, because if we put out this professional front and we can communicate and improve how we do our business and how we work with our animals, then ultimately what we're going to do is improve everything for the animals. And that's really why I started it all. I'm sure why Barbara started it all, and a lot of you out there that started it all. So just keep focused that we're trying to improve with all this shenanigans going on. We're only trying to make sure that we have a really good, strong industry when we all come back, so that we can catch up and care for the animals that we love to do. And I think that's about all I can say, really. I'm absolutely flabbergasted that you all found this interesting, and
you won't believe how long we've been going, Joe. We thought it'd be 20 minutes.
and thank you so much, Barbara, for actually putting this on, because I certainly wouldn't have instigated it all, and she's such advances all of this communication. So thank you so much for inviting me, and I hope everybody's found it useful.
Oh, Joe, I'm just honoured that when I put out the call to you, you said, yeah, let's do this. We've known each other for such a long time, and we share this immense passion for the animals that are in our lives. And we want this industry to survive and get through this. And the only way this is going to happen is we unify ourselves across all the professional associations, work together, be kind, be generous, support everybody as they get back into the industry. And there's enough animals for everybody. But I think we have to look beyond the UK. We have to look globally. It's an impact. And, I think by sharing resources, sharing ideas, and that's what's happened in the chat. It's just brilliant. Everyone's sharing, working together across all the different species. And that's what it's all about. So I'd like to say, on behalf of Joe and myself, thank you so much for signing in and listening to us. We hope you found it useful and bring some positivity towards it all. I have also devised a really extensive resource for you. There is a link down there. It says K9HS additional resources. It goes to another bit of tech that I'm playing about with that I love. And I've put together a whole page. It's got videos on it, links on it, informative blogs, business planning, ideas like that. If you go to the very bottom of the page, if you would like more of this and you would like to support us to generate some more in conversation, there's a link and it's buy me a coffee. So if you would like to buy me a coffee, you press on the link. You can buy me 3 coffees, you can buy me 1 coffee, but we'll use that to, expanding and developing more in conversations, more free resources for everybody, and to really share our ideas, worldwide. So I cannot thank you enough for attending. I really appreciate the feedback. Please keep putting the feedback down in the chat. It means so much to Joe and myself. And thank you, Joe, for giving up your time and sharing all these ideas, because I think it's just brilliant. We're working together. And you've been a great buddy and friend, and you are, without doubt, an acclaimed equine physiotherapist.
Yeah,
Knew I had to handle that.
Buy her a cup of coffee or she'll tease me some more.
Okay,
Bye.
but bye everybody. Really enjoyed it, and take care, and please keep safe. That's the most important thing to us. So, keep safe, keep well, and keep in touch. Keep connected.